welcome to In the Black, DeFree's podcast. We are in season 3. I am your host, Tamika Stembridge, Executive Director of the DeFree Global Foundation. I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Soaries.
Welcome. Thank you, Tamika, for your co-hostness.
I know. I go back and forth between introducing myself as a co-host, but it's just weird.
I know it is weird, but no, this is great. I was telling one of our other guests that I'm really inspired that people really listen to podcasts. I listen to podcasts, but I didn't realize that the podcast itself was as popular a platform, and we reach a lot of people, and people listen. So I appreciate this time.
Yeah, well, thank our listeners, and hopefully we continue to bring you really good content. I'm excited about today's guest, not only because he's saved my behind a few times when we've had DeFree requests come in and we couldn't do what we needed to do, but he's been a leader and an advocate for DeFree since I met him, and I know Dr. Soaries, right. I thank you for introducing Trevor to us. Forgive me, Pastor Trevor Hyde.
Pastor Hyde,
Associate
Pastor
of
Berean
Baptist Church in Brooklyn.
My hometown.
I knew he was going to say that. That's why I paused.
That's right, my hometown.
Welcome to the podcast, Pastor Hyde. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me today. And thank you, DeFree, for the work that you are doing in transforming and changing lives. I'm excited at the opportunity to be a part of the organization and to support in whatever ways I can. And I'm just excited to be on the podcast with you tonight.
Thank you. So how did we get to this place? Tell us a little bit about how you and Dr. Soaries met. How did Pastor Hyde get involved with DeFree?
That's a good question.
So my pastor, Dr. Ollie Griffin, has a relationship with Dr. Soaries, and I have been in banking prior to full-time ministry for about 15 years. So I would always have these conversations with Pastor Griffin saying we need to do a revival for the church, but it has to focus on financial revival. So I began to talk to him. I ran into a DeFree table at a Progressive National Baptist Conference, and I saw the work, I saw the book, I bought the book, and I started reading the book, but I never introduced it to the church. So I spoke to Pastor Griffin saying, hey, I have this book, and I think it'll be so cool if we can have Dr. Soaries come in and do the revival, and we introduce the book after the revival. So Pastor Griffin, we reached out to Dr. Soaries, got him to come in, and I told Dr. Soaries, please make sure you bring the books. And after Dr. Soaries preached, I believe he sold out. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Soaries.
No, I did. I recall.
Sold out completely, and so I used the revival.
I only had 5 books, so it's No, I had a whole suitcase full of books, and they sold out, and some people actually had to wait until we sent more books over.
So it was a great experience, and from that revival, I used that as the launching pad for the DeFree course, and that resulted in about 50 people signing up for the course, and those 50 people, believe it or not, stayed through the entire 12 weeks. And it has transformed their lives in ways that I can't even articulate.
Wow.
A color, a number. I'm more than my credit score. But a low score means a closed door. Higher interest rates for cars and mortgages. But change is easier than we think. With Credit Builder Plus, a simple loan can build your credit. So we can all get to where we want to be. Green. Let's get to green together.
Wow.
Yeah, I stopped by Tuesday night, Hyde?
Wednesday night.
I stopped by one Wednesday night. It took me forever to get there. Oh, God. I didn't know Brooklyn had traffic like that. So I stopped by, and I told them not to tell them I was coming because I wasn't sure I was coming.
Make it right.
And I tried to do that. I did that in Atlanta one time. I did it somewhere else, but I went to Brooklyn, and I was so inspired by how inspired they were, and I listened to a couple of testimonies. What's amazing, Reverend, and Tamika knows this because she's actually taught DeFree herself. What's amazing is how people begin the transformation process even before the 12 weeks is over.
Right.
And your people were giving testimonies about changes that had happened in their finances, and I think it was only like week 4 or 5 or 6.
Oh yeah, I mean the changes were almost immediate. When you go through the first 3 chapters of the book, that causes them to look at themselves and really question why they're doing what they're doing. The transformation for them, for that particular class, happened almost immediately. I was shocked at the aha moments that everyone was having, but it was in those first 3 chapters that laid the groundwork that made everything else so much easier for the remaining few weeks, 8 or 9 weeks or so.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much. We try to tell people that, as we're teaching and training organizations on doing dfree, we're like, the first 3 weeks we talk about money, but not really. It really is to prep you for the financial work. And to hear the testimony that the first 3 weeks is really when you see the transformation really helps to solidify that for people, because they can't imagine not walking into a financial empowerment class or any kind of class around money and not talking about quote unquote money specifically in the first 3 weeks and seeing people's lives change. So that means a lot.
So, Reverend Hyde, not only have you led dfree at Berean with the permission of Pastor Griffin, but you've also had some dfree experiences yourself with you and your family. You want to talk about that? You don't have to tell us all your business, but you could give a little praise report or testimony.
Oh yeah, and I don't mind being transparent. I think when people actually hear numbers, they understand the magnitude of the work of dfree. So when I began looking at the book and reading the book, I had credit card debt. Now, from the time, Dr. Soaries, that you came to the church and did the revival and I began to teach it, I had about $9,000 or $10,000 worth of credit card debt. Now, that's roughly, about 2 years ago or so?
Yes.
That you were there?
Yes.
So between that time and about 2 weeks ago, I have completely eliminated that $10,000 worth of credit card debt. And it is solely because of the conviction that I felt once I began reading the material, and began seeing myself in a different light, saying, I wonder what debt-free actually looks like. Can I really challenge myself to push myself and get to that place that dfree is telling me that I can go to? And I implemented all of the steps. And I sent Dr. Soaries a text not too long ago. My credit card company actually owes me $50 because I overpaid. So I went from owing to them owing me. And that is my experience with dfree. It has completely changed how I spend money. I mean, I do spending fast intermittently now. There has to be no special occasion, but I'll just decide I am not spending money on these few items for the next 30 days. That's how deeply the work has impacted me and my family and has changed how we view money.
I was in a meeting earlier today, and a high-ranking executive asked me if I thought the political climate of the country had any bright spots. In other words, is there anything encouraging that you take away? And I said, yeah, I think the political climate has reinforced the idea that we're going to have to do for ourselves strategies and projects, because we can't expect the government in the shape that it's in to come to our rescue.
Right.
And if it did come to our rescue, it's not going to happen next week, which means we've got to develop a different perspective so that we can develop different strategies. And it starts with the way we think. The Bible says, as a man thinketh, so is he. And I commend you for your transparency, first of all, and want to remind our listeners that not all dfree teachers are dfree already. Right. In other words, you don't have to be debt-free to teach dfree. That it's a process, right. It's interactive, and it's a community at work on itself. Uh-huh. And so I appreciate that. Our very first dfree chairperson in 2005, and this is our 15th anniversary, when I asked that person to become the chairman of the ministry, he's a big-time executive in a financial services company, And he gets up in church and unbeknownst to me, announces, I've accepted the pastor's invitation to chair this ministry, and I want everyone to know that I'm not dfree. So I thought I was appointing someone who was like the poster child.
Yeah.
He was the poster child of what was needed, not what had been achieved. So, Reverend, we desperately need young men, young women, young leaders like yourself to help us, because the demand on our staff or the demand on our resources exceeds our capacity. So can we look forward to you being on the team in the future? We have a planning retreat coming up. We need to know, can we factor you into our plans?
Oh, I am a dfree advocate, and I will be a lifelong dfree supporter. Again, I've seen what this work does. I've seen what it has done in my life. I've seen what it has done in some of the lives of the people in my church, where people paid down credit cards, credit scores increased. People began to realize that I don't need to live this way, but there are other options. So I've seen it firsthand. So I am a firm believer in its work. And short answer to your question is yes, you can count me in.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
We've already scheduled you, so I'm just glad you agree. You live and breathe the dfree principles, and you just have a way of working with others that really fits in with who we are and what we do. And so I just really appreciate you stepping up and being willing to share your personal testimony, your testimony as a pastor and leader of this movement in your own church. We just really appreciate it.
What would you like to see in the future as we plan? What kind of suggestions would you give us as you have a passion for these principles and for this brand to expand? What suggestions do you have?
I just think as long as you all keep staying on the cutting edge, utilizing the technology mediums that you all are using, you all will continue to reach people and expand the brand as you all are already doing. So I don't see anything major that you need to change, because you all are consistently cutting away, chipping away at what you're doing, looking at it, analyzing it, and making sense of where it is versus where the culture is. And as long as you are looking at the culture, which I see you all do very well, you all tap into the mainstream culture, the church culture, and you analyze it and you do it very well, and you make the principles adaptable to each side. So that works perfectly for what you all are doing. So I would just say continue to make sure that you keep that spirit, that we will never rest on our laurels, but we're always going to continue to look at what we're doing to see if it makes sense for where we are now. And if not, then we can make adjustments accordingly to keep ourselves viable.
Well, that's great. That's great.
Good. That's good to know.
For our listeners, you may be with us for the first time. This is the dfree in the Black podcast. We're talking to Reverend Trevor Hyde, a dynamic young minister from Brooklyn. He's at the Berean Baptist Church. He's one of our dfree spokesmen and leaders and teachers and participants himself. Our website is www.mydfree.org. You can access free videos, you can access online education, you can access solutions through our partnerships. You can walk through the dfree process guided by videos that don't cost money. Go to the website, mydfree.org. Send us an email. Let us know that you've listened. Let us know that you enjoyed the podcast, and let us know how we can bring dfree to your community. Thank you so much, Reverend Hyde. Thank you, Tamika. And until next time, this is DeForest Soaries saying stay in the black.